Good morning, afternoon, everyone. We're going to have a panel discussion, and the subject matter is going to be bridging the gap between industry leaders of today and future innovators of tomorrow, an interactive panel on preparing the next generation for commercial success. All right, I'm Dan Daly, I'm the moderator. I have panelist Ken Polk from the Innovation Council of the American Chemical Society, Keith McGregor from Georgia Institute of Technology, and Jan Ransmakers from the Director of Fine Chemical Consultant Group. So I would like to introduce Ken Polk, and Ken's going to talk a little bit about himself.
Thank you, Dan. This one?
It said it was on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I'm Ken Polk. I'm at the American Chemical Society. We're the world's largest scientific society, 158,000 members strong. We're a primary publisher of chemistry information with high impact factors from many of our journals. We are a publisher primarily. We also have a chemical abstract service division located in Columbus, which is an aggregator of information in the chemistry space. I come to you today as Innovation Counsel. My job is sort of lawyer / innovator, and I'm delighted to be here. So I'll pass this on.
Hello, I'm Keith McGregor. I'm the director of Venture Lab. Venture Lab is one of the largest university commercialization groups in the nation. We have under our wing at Georgia Tech about 140 startups at different stages of development. We help our researchers and our faculty members and our students take their research and get it from the lab out into the world. Our companies over the last 7 or 8 years have raised more than $1.3 billion in funding. And I'm delighted to be here to talk to you today about the National Science Foundation and how we're changing the way in which we do translational research.
Good morning. My name is Jan Ramakers. I'm not an American. I'm from Scotland in Europe, and I'm a consultant. I'm a chemist by background, and I've worked in the chemical industry for about 16 years. Then switched to consulting in '96. I've been running my own company since 1999, and what I'm doing is basically business research, competitor intelligence, strategy analysis. I help companies develop new strategies. I help startups to get started with their business in the chemical industry, mainly in fine chemicals and the fine chemical customer markets, pharmaceuticals, agrochemicals. I'm an associate of a number of other organizations, including Klein & Company, the Boston Consulting Group. I'm an advisor of Holland Corporate Finance, which is part of one of the largest M&A networks in the world. I do a lot of due diligence in the chemical industry. I'm also a non-executive director of a company called Salucomp. It's a company based in Scotland, using sugar beet material after the sugar's been taken out to make nanofibers, cellulosic nanofibers. It's a startup company, and I'm trying to give a more sort of commercial view on what's within the panel here today, and it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jan. So I guess just to kick it off, the U.S. has been the leading economic country of the world, and in a large part it was due to the blessings of all our natural resources. However, in recent times, the ability to create inventions that actually make it into the marketplace has waned, and we find that the industry is tending to become a lot more risk averse, and the gap between the innovators and the existing corporations is widening. So each of these speakers have worked with organizations that try to narrow that gap. So we're going to just open up the panel discussion on what efforts can be made to decrease the gap and make things less risk or make the inventions less risk averse for industry to partake in them. So the first speaker will be Ken Polk. And just here, you can use this or that.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. So I know we have time is short, and I want to have great deference for our fellow speakers, so I'm going to run through this fairly quickly. The ACS is primarily the professional home to chemists, and we asked ourselves, what were we doing helping entrepreneurs, or should we? This came out of a 2010 task force report led by then President Joseph Francisco, Madeline Jacobs, our then acting CEO and executive director. And what came out of that report, amongst other things, was entrepreneurship was a way for ACS to be involved, to engage young innovators and stem the tide of losses in jobs in industry. One of the core findings was we had lost almost 300,000 chemist jobs in 20 years, and we needed to change that. We also then turned to our friends at the Kauffman Foundation to learn that entrepreneurship was the consistent way for job creation to occur. So from that 2010 report of innovation, chemistry, and jobs, we were tasked with coming up with a business accelerator to try to help chemists develop their jobs, or to develop their companies. So what I'm going to talk to you about quickly is the results of our pilot. We ran a 2.5-year pilot experiment, and then in the spirit of this particular session is to offer some advice on what we learned. All right, so it was the pilot ended in 2010. The ACS board had authorized this and funded it in total. We ran about 200 ACS member entrepreneurs through it. This was a member benefit. We had discovered inside of our membership base that there was on the order of 5,000 to 10,000 chemical entrepreneurs. That was quite a surprising number to us. We also learned that we didn't want to provide this anything other than member benefits, so we incurred all of the costs and supported the costs of the 2.5-year pilot. The board approved. This was to gain access to our resources, so what we tried to do is make sure we were offering our core capabilities to them. So they got no cost access to ACS pubs for 6 months. They got no cost access to the chemical abstract service SciFinder product. We connected them with members. I went on and talked to sources of capital, and we connected them to forums, and we created forums for them to pitch to capital. We also were networking them with our industry partners to try to see if a licensing scenario worked for them. We held 3 entrepreneur summits to bring the stakeholders together so we could gather data and find out where is our place. And as I mentioned, 3 showcase events where we actually had between 15 and 20 entrepreneurs pitch to money. So being good entrepreneurs, we thought we should be too. We learned how to pivot. So we started out by serving budding and seasoned chemical entrepreneurs, and we changed to just seasoned entrepreneurs. The universities are doing a fine job of educating. You'll hear more from Keith about that. We also accepted anybody that wanted to apply, and we learned quickly there were some people we couldn't help. So we became more selective because we looked at who exactly was offering us the best chance to create jobs. From my perspective, create jobs. That's my goal. That's my mission. That's what ACS sent me to do. If you're learning about being an entrepreneur, you're too far away. So we changed. We pivoted. We also pulled advisors and placed advisors on one-on-one assignments. We didn't like that anymore. What we did was created a 4 or 5 panel chemistry executive tiger team to sort of tear apart the finance, the management team, all the things that you're going to hear more about what Keith is going to talk to you about, but in a different way, and that we wanted to give them a sense that industry could bring valuable information to them to help them think more about their value proposition, the key people that need to be under advisory teams, the key people that need to be members of their management teams, and so on. And lastly, what we did was we wanted this resource. We started by saying, okay, here's the plethora of resources. How would you use it? We learned that wasn't a good path. We learned we had to be more proactive. We had to teach them how to use these resources so that they could develop faster. So some of the things we learned. So we learned that they struggle with what is the best overall value proposition, And some of it was quite surprising to see they were going down one pathway with a technology only to learn there was a customer waiting in the wings in a different way for a different application of their technology that was sooner to market, easier to revenue, and they learned. We also learned that they needed to have a deeper understanding of the customer. I won't belabor that point. You'll hear more about that. They also needed the show and tell. They had very little to show. So you can talk about what your prototype, or you can talk about what your product opportunity is, but you needed to be able to demonstrate that it had some minimal viability. We needed to talk to them and help them on what's a compelling business case. You know, you have a great technology, but no management team, not a critical, not a compelling business case. We had to tell them about what investors are looking at. We had so many people come to us and say, well, we talked to 100 investors and we can't get anywhere. Well, who were you talking to? Are these people that have that focus? You're not going to have any activity from an investor who has a therapeutic focus if you bring to them a medical device. You're talking to the wrong people. You need to think about who you want to talk to, and then shortlist them and go after them. And we also needed to tell them more about pitching more effectively. To a T, almost 100%. All of you have magnificent technology. You want to talk about it, and that's all you want to talk about. The investors don't care about that. They care about how will I get my money back, how long will it take, and how much more am I going to get back than I gave you, ROI. So here's my observations. Take these for what it's worth. Think about getting value to the customer as soon as possible. Good enough is a lot better than I've got this perfect. There's a paradigm shift, and I think, again, you're going to hear some exciting stuff that they're doing at Georgia Tech and at Alabama and Tulane and other universities. It's exciting to know, iterate to the customer, iterate to the product, and then get the business later. It'll fall into place. Also, I want to encourage you, get up to speed on finance, because believe you me, when you go to ask an investor to separate $1 million from their kitty, they're going to want to know why they're doing it, how they're going to do it, how do they protect their interests, how can they follow on, who's going to be, how are the proceeds going to be used, etc. So get up to speed. And also think about financing as a runway. You can't land a 737 jet on a small airfield on a farm. You need to think about runway. How long do you need this runway to be? So you want to think about seed, you want to think about follow-on, you want to think about first, the Series A, and so on. So have a strategy. When you communicate that to the investor, then they'll know you thought this through. It was a big pain point for us. And lastly, again, I can't emphasize this enough. What most of us have learned, and I communicate, is find the investor who's aligned with what you are looking to do. So they need to be active. They can't be just somebody that talks the talk. They need to be interested, and you have to work out the time horizons for the return. So I know I want to make sure I ran through this quickly, so I leave lots more for my fellow panelists. So happy to answer any questions afterwards. Thank you.
About 10 years ago, I joined Georgia Tech after a pretty good career as an entrepreneur. I created 10 companies over time, and 2 of them exited really well, and 2 of them were terrible, and the rest were sort of mediocre. And my initial job at Georgia Tech, coming into Venture Lab, was to evaluate all of the technologies that were being created, all the technologies that were being disclosed. And I had an instant problem. Even though I have been a lifelong geek, and believe you me, I am a true geek, no one can be smart enough in every area that a contemporary university like a Georgia Tech covers to be able to do technology evaluation there. Moreover, to evaluate the technology is to presume that you already understand the application area of the technology and know how to value it for that commercialization intent. And so very often the practice at a technology transfer group is to send it out for an outside evaluation. This is simply nothing more than delaying the inevitable evaluation of we don't know, and deducting about $3,000 to $5,000 out of your bank account to get that evaluation. And this problem of technology evaluation has been systemic, not just at Georgia Tech and not at Tulane and the University of Alabama, but across the nation, and in fact, I would argue across the world, because no one is smart enough to look at a technology and know whether or not it has any commercial value. We take good stabs at it, but we don't. And not only were we alone in the struggle, and we did struggle at Georgia Tech, the National Science Foundation and the other funding agencies recognize the problem as well, because think of it, you are taxpayers and so am I. And on our behalf, the National Science Foundation puts millions and millions of dollars into the research institutions for basic research with very little output in comparison and very little ROI, to be honest about it. So years and dollars are going in. About 4 years ago, the National Science Foundation decided to reinvent itself. And they invented a program called the Innovation Corps, the I-Corps program. They borrowed from a rising trend out of Silicon Valley, the lean startup methodology, and attempted to apply it to science. And of course, this is coming from the computer industry, and that's the industry that I'm from. And bits are cheap, but atoms, things made out of atoms, are not. And very often you hear associated with the word an entrepreneur that we pivot. Well, pivoting, if it's bits, is easy. I simply delete the file and I type a bunch more and I have new bits to go with. But when it's atoms and it's made out of atoms, that pivot is a high cost too. And so I and my colleagues that joined into the initial part of this National Science Foundation program were incredibly skeptical that it would work at all. Bits, yes, atoms, no. And we were wrong. Today, more than 30 cohorts have been held on behalf of the National Science Foundation, teaching the nation's scientists in groups of 3, about 700 teams now, how to do commercialization. And this technique that we use centers around figuring out who the customer might be. Because if you think about it, the most essential fear that a company has is not whether or not they can make the thing, but whether or not anybody's there to buy the thing. Because if somebody's not going to buy the thing you make, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. And we at the university don't want to commercialize hobbies. Our professors are great at creating hobbies, and so are our students. We want our stuff out in the world and have an impact in the world. And with the National Science Foundation kicking to these teams $50,000 a shot early on, pre-SBIR Phase 1, we give them this money and we task them to go out into the world or come to places like this, talk to customers, discover what the needs are in the marketplace. What's the pain someone endures in trying to accomplish some job or some task? What gains do you expect or desire? And then we ask them to consider the technology that they have back on the shelf or the possible set of technologies back home that might be able to be coerced to remedy that pain or provide that gain. And that is the basis of how you create a company. It's not all of it. You still have to make things, get it shipped, have partnerships, provide stuff, perhaps have facilities. It's a long road. But you have to begin someplace, and it always begins with the problem that you want to solve. Not a science problem, but a commercial problem. And because this thing seemed to work pretty well for the National Science Foundation, at Georgia Tech, when I came back from it, we in essence burned the boats. We wholly aligned our commercialization project to this. And since that alignment, Georgia Tech has been ranked in the top 5 of all incubators in the nation and in the world from that moment of alignment. We have more. We were originally helping about 20 companies or so. We now help about 140 companies. Georgia Tech sees 2 new inventions every single business day. And every one of those opportunities goes through this particular process of discovering the customer, validating what you heard from learning about the customer, and then we get onto the act of adding money, adding resources, finding management teams, and commercializing and launching companies. Thank you.
Try and put this a bit higher so you can hear me as well. As both Keith and Ken said, a lot revolves around commercialization of ideas. If a scientist or a chemist gets a new idea and gets an idea about something, a new product, they get very enthusiastic. I can connect to that, being a chemist by background myself. I get very enthusiastic, but there's a huge big pitfall, as was said before, because the only thing you really want, if you want to make it a commercial success, is you want to have a market for the product. If you haven't got a market, forget it, and it is indeed going to be a hobby, which can be fine, but not if you want to commercialize it. So if you are looking at setting up a partnership or a company with an existing company, bear in mind that what the industry is looking for, every single company, the prime objective normally is continuity of the company, profitability. It has to be making money. If you're making a product and you're losing money, or you're not making enough money to pay for your cost, then you are going to stop it, because that's going to take down your company. So sustainability is another one. You have to be, certainly in this day and age, your product has to be sustainable. If it's a very polluting process you're doing, you're going to get an awful lot of negative publicity, and products may be taken off the market simply because of that, because we as consumers don't want that. So you need to bear that in mind. What you want from the product you're doing and from the corporation is you want to provide a company with a competitive advantage, whether it's through a new technology, a new product, a new service, whether you allow them to go into new markets. It has to be all in line with the ultimate aim of the company, apart from it being within their product portfolio, etc., or providing a new solution to an existing problem. It's a solution you're providing. You're providing something to the market that they need, that they want. If you don't do that, then forget it. Now, if you're, as was said before, if you're setting up a company of your own, you're creating, say, an SME, that's fine. The majority of jobs in the chemical industry, as well as in most other industries, are not in the huge big corporations. They're in SMEs, so that's fine. But you will deal with people that provide the money for it, and they will look. And I know, because I do it on a day-to-day basis. I do due diligence, which means I look at the position of the company that's for sale. Or the investors who are looking to invest in that company, I'll look at the position in the market and what it would be like at the end of the investment horizon, because an investor invests money simply as a business because they want to make money on the money they invest. So they want to make sure what their exit can be in 3 or 5 years, and the baseline is they want to make money. Sorry to be so blunt about making money, but I think that's the thing you need to keep in mind. And I've seen companies go wrong because there's an example of a company that I've seen. There was 2 great guys running it. They were great chemists. They had smashing, fantastic ideas. They made great products, and they failed miserably because they didn't actually put any effort into marketing. That's another point to consider, actually. If you're a great chemist, doesn't necessarily mean you're a great marketeer or a great businessman. So you need to recognize your own strength and weaknesses. And if you can't do it yourself, make sure you get somebody in and who does that for you. Make sure you get somebody to run the business as a proper business aimed at making profit and providing benefit to another company or to society in general. Now, on that note, I'd like to stop here and allow some time for give back the floor to Dan. Thank you.
Okay, I do believe there's some time for questions, so if there's any questions, we do have a mic that we could pass to you, so there's any, okay. So, Scott, just address the panelists that you want the question to be for.
Hi, I'm Scott Spear of the University of Alabama. My question's for Keith. You mentioned team building. Could you maybe elaborate on a little bit more on that at the university level, on how you develop the teams?
Yeah, sure.
It takes a lot of people to create a startup. It takes people who make things. It takes people who market things and sell things. It takes people who make sure you're not running into legal trouble, to drive the trucks and all of that. And practically no one who starts out with the idea thinks of all of these possible people. And so a practice at a university like mine not just engages in the act of helping a team discover who the customer might be, but then once we've actually got something in hand, we have to get about the business of company creation. And we must find people who can be a part of the team. And the first person we're looking for, frankly, turns out to be someone who can be on the business side, because we share an opinion that perhaps my colleagues may share, in that we do not believe that a scientist, an inventor, should be the CEO of their company. But rather they should be the CTO or the technical advisor for some amount of time, because frankly, typically we're dealing with university professors. We don't want our university professors to leave our university. We want them to create great students, and we want the students to be in the company. And so we must recruit management talent from our area. The Atlanta, Georgia area is blessed with a lot of available management talent. But your areas are as well, and a big hack for finding it, if you're associated with a university or nearby one, turns out to be the fantastic alumni base of the university, because there's almost always someone who is in job transition, who's looking for the next thing to have at. And the university's development office loves you when you can connect an alum who is successful with their next potential success. Thank you.
Any other questions? Huh? Did you have a question? Okay, so actually I have one for Jan. Or Jan, sorry. So Jan, so supposedly, I mean, the point you made about entrepreneurs and their certain skill sets and lack of certain skills, you know, suppose a company of, say, two technology-based, people recognize that they don't have the great marketing skills, but and they realize they can reach out to consultant groups like yourself to get that, but they don't have the revenue to offer. Do you have any suggestions for them?
Well, basically, if they haven't got enough money, that's I think that's not uncommon. Most startup companies don't have enough money, and even if you're getting money in from investors, it always takes longer than you think. We've at Salucom just done the second round of financing, and it came in just in time. If you don't have money and you've got a great idea, there are people around that are willing to help and assist on a deferred fees basis. I've done it myself, assisted companies that I sort of believed in and deferred fees until they could actually afford it. So that's a way that you could actually try and solve that. There are people that actually want to do that.
Great.
So any other questions, comments? Has anyone else figured out the best way to do this they want to share with us? Okay, well, with that, I guess we'll conclude this session. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you for joining me and thanking the participants on the panel. Yeah.